Good morning, everyone. My name is Apeksha, Assistant Professor, Indraprasth Law College. So, in the previous lecture, we did about who is Muslim, its conversion, and apostasy. Now, in this lecture, we will be doing about sources of Muslim law. The topic of this lecture will be sources of Muslim law. This is the second unit, and we'll be covering this in two lectures. So, starting with sources, they are basically sources of Muslim law. It is classified into two categories, right? So, it is classified into two categories. The first one is primary sources, and then the second one is the secondary sources. So, in this lecture, we'll be completely doing about primary sources. Now, primary sources are what, and what are the secondary sources? Primary source are those on which, as you can read, are those on which Muslim law relied on. So, sources on which Muslim law completely relays, they are those primary sources, and these sources are the foundation of Muslim law. So, it is the original, it is the primary source of Muslim law. These four are the primary sources. What are these? Number first, Quran, then Sunnah, Ijma, and then Qiyas. These four are they come under the primary sources of the Muslim law. The starting with the Quran, we'll be dealing with every primary source. So let's start with the Quran. Now the primary source of Muslim law, it is the primary source. It's the revelation, which have two kinds, express and implied, right? And Quran is composed of such express revelation, as they are directly made by the very words of God to Muhammad. So it is the original or the primary source of Muslim law, and it is the name of the holy book of Muslims, which contain the direct revelation from the God through Prophet, their God, right? So it is in this form of series of communication which is addressed by God to Prophet. Now the direct express or this direct express, the revelation, this consists of communication which is made by the angel Gabriel under the direction of the God to the Muhammad. These communication can be it can be either in words of the God or by any hint and of such knowledge which the Prophet has acquired through the inspiration of God. So all the principle, ordinances, teachings, practice of Islam, they are all drawn from the Quran. So therefore Quran is very important. The first point we see, Muslim law is founded upon Al-Quran, which is believed by Muslims to have existed from eternity, subsisting in very essence of God. So Quran is the first source of Muslim law. The word Quran, the second point, the word Quran has been derived from the Arabic word Qura, which means to read. So the Quran is a primary source of Muslim law. In point of time as well as in importance, the Islamic religion and Islamic society owes its birth to the word of Quran. So the whole Islamic religion and the society, their birth, they owe their birth to the word of Quran. So this holy book, it contains the fundamental principles which regulate the human life. The major portion of Quran, it deals with theological and moral reflections. The Quran, it consists of the communication of God. It is believed to be of divine origin. So it is the first and the original legislative code of Islam. And it is the final and supreme authority. So it's the final and the supreme authority. That's what the importance of Quran is. It's the supreme. Moving on to the second source of the primary source, second, is Sunnah. This is not tea, this is Sunnah. Now what is Sunnah? Or Ahadith, we call it Ahadith. It is also called Ahadith. Now just as Quran is the express revelation through Muhammad, the Ahadith and Sunnah are implied revelation. That was the express revelation, and Sunnah is the implied revelations. In the sayings and the action of the Prophet, their God, and which is not written down in his lifetime, but it is preserved by the traditions and then handed to the agents. So what does basically Sunnah means? This word, it's Sunnah, it's not tea, it's Sunnah. Okay, so the word Sunnah means the trodden path. And this meaning shows it denotes some kind of practice and precedent. It is belief of Muslim that revelation were two kind: manifest, that is called Zahir, and internal, batin. So basically Sunnah means that what the Prophet did, and Ahadith means what he said. So this denotes, Sunnah denotes the practices and precedent of Prophet, like whatever he did, whatever he said. And that is treated as a tradition. So it is the second source of the Muslim law. First one was the Quran, then second is Sunnah. Now, so according to Muslim law, there are two types of revelation. First is manifest, Zahir, and internal, that is batin. Now what is manifest? Now manifest, as it is written Zahir, manifest or express revelation, they were the very words of Allah. It came to Prophet through the angel Gabriel. That is what meant by manifest revelation. So such revelation, it becomes the part of the Quran. And on the other hand, the internal revelation, they were those which were the prophet's word and did not come through the Gabriel. Right? The revelations which were the prophet's word, the internal revelation, and they did not come through the angel Gabriel, like in the case it came in manifest. So such internal revelation, they forms the part of Sunnah. Traditions, therefore, they differ from the Quran. How they differ from Quran now? In the sense that Quran consists of the very words of God, whereas Sunnah is the language of Prophet. So it is the language of the Prophet. And Sunnah, Quran, it consists of the very words of the God. Now, the Sunnah is further classified into Sunnatul Kul, Sunnatul Fail, Sunnatul Takrir. So it's Sunnat, Ul, Qual. Then the same thing, Sunnat, Ul, Fail. I'll tell you what does this mean. Then again the same thing. Okay, it's that is Tahrir. Takrir. Now, Sunnah is basically classified into Sunnatul Qual, Sunnatul Fail, Sunnatul Takrir. What does it mean? It means word spoken. The first one means word spoken. Then Sunnatul Fail means conduct, his actions, the words and daily practice. Sunnatul Takrir means his silence, implying a tacit approval of what was done in his presence. So in this way, Sunnah is further classified. Moving on to Ijma. That is the second, the third primary source. Now, Ijma means the consensus of the companion and follower of Prophet. Now, with the death of Prophet, the original lawmaking process also ended. So the questions which could not be solved either by the principle of Quran or Sunnah, they were decided by the jurists with the introduction of the institution of Ijma. Now, what does this Ijma means? It means agreement of the Muslim jurist of a particular age on a particular question of law. So therefore, I have said that in other words, it is the consensus of jurist opinion. So it was equally binding on the people to act on principle which had been established by agreement among highly qualified legal scholars of any generation. So those persons who had knowledge of law, they were called jurists. Right? Very clear till here. And when Quran and traditions could not supply any rule of law for any problem, these jurists, they unanimously they gave their common opinion or their decision, and that was termed as ijma. And only jurists could take part in it. They were called mujtahids. Only they were competent to participate in the formation of ijma. And not every Muslim was not allowed. Now there are 3 kinds of ijma, if you see. Now the ijma of companion, ijma of jurist, and ijma of people or masses. Now, what is ijma of companion? It is that which is universally accepted through Muslim world and is unrepealable. So the concurrent opinion of the companion of Prophet, it was considered most authoritative and could not be overruled or modified. Then ijma of jurist, this was an unanimous decision of the jurist. So it is the opinion of the majority of the jurists. Then ijma of people or the masses, it is the opinion of majority of Muslims which was accepted as law. But this kind of ijma have the less value. It doesn't have much importance. So moving on to the 4th, before that I'll sum up that ijma is the 3rd source. It is the 3rd source. The 3rd primary source. And the ijma of companion of the Prophet Muhammad, it is said to be the best guide and is universally accepted. So that's what ijma is about. Moving on to qiyas. So it is the last primary source of Muslim law. Qiyas, it means reasoning by analogy. So qiyas basically means measuring or so in Arabic basically qiyas means measurement, accord and equality. So it means, in other words, it means measuring or comparing a thing to a certain standard or to establish an analogy. If there is any matter which is not covered either by the first source, that is Quran, Sunnah or Ijma, so the law may be deductive from what has been already laid down by these 3 authorities by the process of qiyas. Through this process, we can deduct. The law can be deducted from what has already been there in Quran, Sunnah and Ijma by qiyas. So in qiyas, the last line, the rules are deduced by the exercise of reason. So it is a process of deduction, applying the law of the text to the cases which though are not covered by the language of the text and are never covered by the reason of text. So qiyas is the analogical deduction which is derived from a comparison with law. और comparison किसमें? जो पहले के 3 sources हैं. When they do not apply directly to any particular case, but there are some jurists who do not recognize qiyas. Now the process there is a process of qiyas with how it can be applied, and it can only be applied to those texts which are capable of being extended. So what does it mean, capable of being extended? That the text should not be confined to any particular state of facts or rules which have a specific reference. They should be capable of being extended. Then the analogy deduced should not be inconsistent. Inconsistent with whom? With what Quran and Sunnah says. Then qiyas should be applied to discover a point of law and not to determine the meaning or of the words which are used in the text. So what is the use? Where the qiyas should only be applied to discover a point of law. So it must not, what does it conclude? That it must not bring a change in the law which is already there. And if there is any conflict between the 2 deductions, then a jurist is free to accept any of the deduction from a text. So analogy cannot be, the analogy deduced should not be inconsistent with whatever dictates from Quran and authority of the Sunnah. So if we compare it with other source, then qiyas is of not much importance. Now what's the reason? Because of the analogical deduction and the application of the human reasons, which in which it is predicted that there are more possibilities of the error. Therefore it's of much less importance than the 3: Quran, Ijma and Sunnah. So the very primary and supreme one is the primary and supreme one is the Quran, and Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas. Qiyas is of the less importance. Thank you. We will be doing the secondary sources in the next lecture.